If you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking, why did I say all of that? Why did I feel I had to prove myself? This is for you. Because the need to explain yourself doesn't come from nowhere. And the moment you stop, it changes everything. Let's talk about recognition. What over explaining looks like: repeating yourself, adding more detail than needed, trying to make them understand. Because ultimately, at its root, it is you feeling like you've been misunderstood on multiple occasions and you wanting to clear the air, you wanting to essentially reach an understanding with the person that you're trying to communicate with. Internally, though, you're likely experiencing anxiety. You're experiencing an urgency, a sense to explain yourself so that they will understand where you're coming from, and a need to be clear and a need to be fair. You're not trying to control the conversation. You're trying to control how you're perceived. Let's talk about where this comes from. Environments where maybe you weren't believed about something. You told a parental unit or you told an adult something and it was ignored, it was minimized, it wasn't acknowledged. You were maybe potentially shamed for feeling that way or sharing that thought that meant a lot to you. And children are easily susceptible to feeling judgment and feeling shame and just feeling like oftentimes they're not enough or that they've let their caregiver down, which is extremely sad and disheartening to think about. Your words were twisted. Maybe you gave a version of what occurred and no one heard the distinctions that you were making. Maybe at some point you alleged that someone had harmed you in some way, and that wasn't acknowledged. That wasn't essentially valued. You essentially were made to feel like either you were making it up, maybe you were lying, maybe you didn't get your facts correctly. For whatever reason, they decided not to listen to you and potentially misunderstand you. Or you had to defend your reality. And your reality, you knew that it was true because you had experienced it, but no one acknowledged how valid your feelings actually were. So you felt unheard, you felt invisible, you felt like it didn't matter that something had harmed you. It just mattered that they didn't believe you. And you didn't understand why your family wouldn't believe you when you were an honest person to begin with, and you weren't known to make up stories. So over-explaining is an adaptation. If I just say it the right way, and honestly, a lot of us think that. A lot of us think that we can actually talk to people and people will be reasonable and they'll listen and they'll hear things from our viewpoints. But oftentimes people have already made up their mind. They have decided, let's say for instance, in this scenario, it was an adult who was a trusted adult who had harmed someone, either you or someone you know. So the adult oftentimes has an advantage because they can say things like, the children, they don't have language for this. They're not fully understanding what they're saying. And you know how kids, they like to over exaggerate. They like to make up stories. They like to play pretend. And you think about that. And oftentimes adults who aren't as discerning or adults who are overwhelmed or adults who are busy, not making excuses for them, please don't take it that way, just don't see the signs, or they don't have the life experience where they have been a victim of a crime or been preyed on or groomed by an adult. And so it can be extremely difficult to actually be able to read between the lines and understand and realize what actually grooming is and what can actually happen and the damage it could potentially do on the child. And so at some point, explaining yourself wasn't optional. It was necessary. It was necessary to essentially justify why you were doing the things that you did. Even if those things were not in and of themselves bad or a behavior defect or anything of that sort, you still felt that you had to explain yourself. Probably because you were questioned repeatedly at times. I think parents allowed to do that quite a bit frequently. And it can be really disheartening to feel like you're constantly on trial, right? Having to explain things over and over and over again, and then them questioning the little details. Well, didn't you say last time this, and now you're saying this? No, I said that both times. I know what happened. I know what occurred. And ultimately, it's almost like a slap in the face when the people that you trust and your family who should know you literally are kind of discounting what you're saying, not believing you, being distrustful of you, rather than trying to actually get to the bottom of what occurred. So, why it doesn't work. This is a key insight. Not everyone is trying to understand you. Some of them want to get shortcuts to understanding what you're saying. They want it to be as quick as possible, as condensed as possible, so they can get in and out, get the gist of what you're saying, and that be good enough. But certain scenarios are not built for brevity. They are built for expansion, to be able to fully understand the dynamics of what someone has experienced. And a lot of people, for whatever reason, oftentimes don't feel like they have the time, they don't have the energy, they don't have the desire to actually dig deep into something and fix it because they feel like they're constantly running. And again, that's not an excuse. It's just that's where some people are coming from. I do think it's misguided, especially when you have a child or some other person who's important to you. You want to make sure that they're protected and that they're taken care of. And discounting people's feelings, no matter their age, is really not a good strategy. It's a dismissive strategy that people remember, because ultimately people don't remember a lot of what you might say, but they remember how you make them feel. And those feelings can create deep insecurity over time, especially if they're constantly feeling like they're discounted. They're constantly feeling like they have to explain every single thing that they do to be able to get validation from parental units or from older adults. And then some people have already decided which way they're going. Maybe they believe the adult in this particular scenario, or they're listening to be able to respond because they don't want to take accountability. This had nothing to do with me. I just want to let you know this. And if maybe you had been a little bit more honest and a little bit quicker to come to us, maybe this could have actually been resolved. But at this point, I'm not really trusting everything that you're saying. And so I think there's some issues with your story, and I think that you are making things up as you go along. That's kind of what I'm thinking here. And also, a lot of people can benefit from you staying in that position where you constantly are over explaining and wanting people to try to meet you in halfway, which some of them are not willing to do, unfortunately. More explanation doesn't create understanding if the other person isn't open to it. And if they've already made up their mind, they already believe that you're not telling the full truth, then their mind is made up. And so you could be the most masterful orator that there is. They've made up their mind because they have an incentive to disregard what you're saying for whatever reason. Let's talk about the turning point. Let's talk about a moment of awareness here. This isn't helping. You have a moment where you literally are seeing glazed eyes. You're seeing someone like on their phone. Clearly that person is checked out, and they checked out a long time ago. But I would think at least that they would have the decency and the fairness to be able to at least give you some time to acknowledge what you're saying and to ask questions and to clarify and to figure out what actually occurred before they dismiss you. Or I've said enough, because you look and hey, look, this isn't getting anywhere. When somebody's like, yeah, right, okay, yeah, okay. Then they're busy nodding their head to make you think that they're listening to you, but their mind is anywhere but with you, which is really sad. And then there's an emotional shift where you feel discomfort. And silence just feels wrong, especially when you're pouring your heart out and someone is just looking at you silently. The first time you don't explain yourself, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Not because it's wrong, but because it's a new habit you're building. You're building the habit of flexing your muscle that doesn't always have to explain every single thing that you do. What changes when you stop? You conserve energy. You feel more grounded. You don't feel like you're constantly having to prove, have to shuffle, have to hustle, have to explain every single mannerism, every single thought that you've had so that they would understand. And you observe instead of react. Others may not be used to that new role of you, and they want you to be able to explain. Do the heavy lifting for them. They may push back. They may try to escalate you to make you frustrated and angry and upset. They may also get uncomfortable because they're not used to this side of you, the new one that you are working on as you're evolving and growing. When you stop explaining yourself, you're not losing control. You're taking it back. You are not the one who's groveling. You are not the one who is trying to ask for favors. You realize that you don't owe anyone an explanation unless you want to give them an explanation. It's not a requirement to believe you. Your reputation should precede you. Your truth should precede you. People that know you know you. So in closing, you don't need to explain yourself to be understood by the right people. And the people who require constant explanation were never trying to understand you in the first place. If this resonates, I talk a lot about this on Recovering Perfectionist Mama, Grace in Progress, which is on YouTube if you're interested in that. And I also have a true crime channel called Grace and Gavel, where truth meets compassion. Again, also on YouTube under Recovering_Perfectionist_Mama. And if you're interested in that, feel free to check it out. I just want to say I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in today, and for all the support that you all have given me. We have a fantastic community, and everyone is welcome to be in the community and take part in discussions, because we do have some compassionate, empathetic people, which is extremely great for an online community to have. So anyway, from the bottom of my heart, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and your support means a lot to me. Thank you so much, and have a great night. Bye-bye.